Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's session of Unplugged with Ross. First, I would like to thank you for bearing with us for the rescheduling that happened on Tuesday. I know it's not the norm for us to have it on Thursday, so thank you so much for accommodating us. Tonight, we are having a very interesting discussion. The topic of the day is managing up, down, and across 360 influence, the art of navigating stakeholder relationships. And I'm very, very honored to have our guest panelist, Lawrence Gethenji. Lawrence is the managing director of BOC Kenya Limited, BOC Kenya PLC. He has had a glowing career, having overseen operations in 15 countries. He is the convener of the Men's Book Breakfast that has reached over 25 countries. He is married and the father of three children, two young adults and a teenager. So tonight he will be sharing his, experience over the years, having managed, as per the topic of the day, up, down, and across. And as is the norm, before I hand over to Lawrence, I would like to share a bit of insights or statistics. So when it comes to, the value of stakeholder relationships or management, the success multiplier, organizations that actively manage stakeholder relationships are up to 2.5 times more likely to achieve project success. When it comes to profit and performance drive, as a profit and performance driver, effective stakeholder engagement increases the likelihood of completing projects on time and within budget by 40%. When it comes to stakeholder management as a risk reducer, over 50% of project failures are attributed to poor stakeholder engagement and communication breakdowns. And last but not least, as a strategic advantage, companies that invest in strong stakeholder relationships are better positioned to navigate crisis, build trust, and unlock new growth opportunities. So we can all agree, even when it comes to our day-to-day activities within the office or even in our private lives, the value of stakeholder management. Lawrence, karibu sana, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm really excited about this discussion, and I know it will be very fruitful. Karibu.
Thank you so much, Rosalie, for that introduction, and I'm happy to be here this evening. Looking forward
Yeah,
to the engagement. Yeah.
fantastic. To start us off, in your experience, what does true influence look like beyond positional authority?
Well, I would say that influence, or let's say proper or true influence, comes from trust, comes from authenticity, credibility, and also consistency. When people know you to be, having those attributes,
Yeah.
then they are likely to be influenced by you. Actually, not by the title. You know, in the book The Five Levels of Leadership by John C. Maxwell, he he lists the first level. He says the first level of leadership is positional leadership, where people follow you because they must. So remember, like the high school prefect, or the policeman who has been given some authority over you, and you have to obey, but not because you really like what they do, and not because they're good leaders, but just because of what they must do and they have the authority. So that's influence. But true influence actually has those attributes that I have mentioned. People believe in your judgment, people believe in integrity, and they know what they see is what they get, and you are actually someone to be dependent upon. Thank you.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's one of those values that we really need to cultivate with every passing day, so that we can ensure that it's not just a preserve for a certain group of people, but everyone gets to see our authentic selves.
Yeah.
Now, in the same angle, in the same light, why is it increasingly important today for professionals to manage relationships across levels? up, down, and across. Why is that vital, especially if you can give that to us, even on a business perspective?
Well, I think, yeah, because we have different dimensions that we have to deal with in every space that we belong to.
Yeah.
Like you say, there is up, there is below you. Let's say, let me not call it down. There is sideways, yeah, or
Yeah.
horizontal across, and all those have to be managed very, very well. And actually, you're talking about the managing relationships in these levels. Organizations are becoming flatter.
Yeah.
uh, People are becoming more networked. People are also working more on project-based sort of kind of assignments. Even within organization, traditional organizations, see that people are working a lot with projects, meaning that you are working in a team and you need to get the team to move together. And the success of the team and even the individual success depends on how well you collaborate horizontally, diagonally, as you call it, not just vertically. In fact, one of the organizations that I work for, multinational, had collaboration as one of their four, let's say, core values because they realize the importance of getting things moving. And if, let's say, you just manage the relationships up, maybe with your superiors, and you don't manage them well with the people that you work with,
Yeah.
what happens when your superiors move? They move positions or they leave the organization or they leave the team. What happens? You're just left alone and people are laughing at you, and now you are rendered powerless. So it's very important that you collaborate across all directions. One, to be able to achieve the objectives that you have as an organization or as a team, and then number two, also to ensure that there's long-term success for your own success. In fact, Melody Wilding, she's written a book, Managing Up. She says that that influence is less about hierarchy and more about alignment. And you hear the word alignment a lot in organizations these days. Even
Yeah.
when you're going to present a project or you want to pitch for something, you get some key stakeholders or people who are able to influence that decision to be aligned with you even before you go and make that presentation.
Yeah.
So very, very important to be aligned and to manage across all directions.
Fantastic. Now, if we can speak about alignment, a lot of people think sometimes if you are managing across, they just think it is peer to peer. And sometimes they do not see the impact or the positive impact about cross team collaboration. So sometimes people might be domiciled or siloed. How can we use stakeholder management to break silos within organizations and also to see that even if someone is senior to you, at one point of their career, they used to be at the stage you're at. So how can we, use those insights to make us see that anything is possible? You can grow up, and when you are cross collaborating, you're bringing people together, and it's not actually a competition, it is growth as a team.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you will find in different organizations is, yeah, because of the functions that they have, you find people working in silos. In some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, hear people are working in silos. Everybody is seeing the other team or the other function or the other department or division as a competitor. There's conflict. It's like people are fighting for scarce resources, and people are trying to show who is the worst, within the organization, and everybody's defending themselves. They're saying that, yes, I'm doing my best, but it's the other person. And I think it's very important that you, as a leader especially, and I think in this kind of engagement we are looking at people developing their leadership skills. I think it's very, very important to get each and every function to realize their importance in terms of attaining the objectives of that organization. That they appreciate that they're important, you appreciate that they're important as a leader, and then you tell them, you know what, alone you're not going to make it. We have to work together, and the way to work together is not to make the other people look bad, but to understand what is the objective of this organization. I normally say that organizations, let's say commercial organizations, exist for three reasons. One, for growth, because if you don't grow, you stunted and you die.
Yeah.
So you need more sales, you need more market share, you need more profitability. So number one is for growth. Number two is to generate profit, because you have to work in a way that is sustainable, that the stakeholder, shareholder, gets a return out of what you're doing. And then number three, you have to collect cash. Very important. So I'm talking about commercial organizations, but then the principles we're talking about have almost similar kind of objectives, but maybe tied around different points. And it's very important that everyone in the team or in the organization understands why the organization exists and why they themselves are playing that role. Once you do that, then you're able to push in the collaboration further across, different functions or different departments, and make sure that everybody is aligned. If everybody understands why we are here, then everybody is aligned. You've seen when people go to, for example, the World Cup. Football teams go to the World Cup. The national team is made up of people coming from different teams who ordinarily are competing against each other. But now, when they come together and they understand that, by the way, we need to bring this World Cup to our country, we're representing our country, then they collaborate, they are aligned, and they're able to play together. And I think everybody can be aligned towards one common objective.
I love that example that you've given, football teams, national football teams, from sworn enemies when you're competing as individual teams, but when you come for the country, the vision is one, the mission is one. And yes, when it comes to organizations, that is the mindset that we should be taking with us. So if we can look at managing up, influencing senior leadership, what are
Yeah.
some effective ways to gain trust and buy in from senior leaders without overstepping? Because I think that is one thing a lot of us struggle with. Senior leadership is held in very high regard, and sometimes the culture of the organization can also be a hindrance of that, that communication, for making them be closer to the people. How can we gain trust to senior leaders without overstepping the boundaries?
Well, thank you. So I've already touched a little bit on that, but I would say that leadership does not like surprises. They'll always want to, anticipate what's coming. And if there's anything that is going to be drastic, that is going to happen at the end of the period, for example, if it's a business organization, you know that you're not going to reach your sales, you know your profitability is going to be like this, or there is some issue that may be considered to be significant, then leadership wants to understand and to be aware of this in advance. So you avoid surprising, whether good or bad. Nobody wants surprises. And then you also have to anticipate the needs. So try to think two steps ahead of what your leader may be wanting. So if you're talking about, let's say, doing very good business this quarter, why don't you think 2 quarters ahead? This month, why don't you think 2 months ahead or 3 months ahead? You think about the future, steps ahead of what is sort of the standard period. And then again, I'm biased towards business because that's where I've been most of the time in business organizations, even if it's engineering. Always you have to talk in a language that is easily understood. And so you frame ideas, I would say, in business terms, in terms of business impact. For example, if we do ABCD, this is going to reduce our cost by X percentage, is going to increase our market share by X percentage, and this is aligned with the strategic goals of the organization, or this is aligned with the objectives that we have this year. So when you do those things, then leadership feels respected and easy to get buy-in from them. Now, when you have, let's say, key, let's say, projects or positions that you want, like I mentioned earlier, it's always good to touch base well in advance to all the different stakeholders at a senior level, even if they're not within your department or division, to pick one of them and speak with them and let them know what you're working on or what you're thinking and what their thoughts are around that idea. When you do that, then you'll find that actually you're able to get a positive feedback, or it could also be feedback that is maybe corrective in nature, but I would still call that positive. And then when you go to a room where people are deciding, then at the table, you have people who are vouching for you because you already reached out to them in advance and they feel respected and they feel actually they can be part of the success.
Now that's a very eye-opening view about how we can manage senior leadership. But we also know that sometimes you can have blockers within that senior leadership. Not all of them are receptive to change. Not all of them are receptive to feedback. How can we navigate that? Because sometimes you will have people say, we have this brilliant idea as a team, but our line manager, who might happen to be a senior person, is not receptive to ideas. And if it's not coming through like it is their original, well thought out idea, they will not be supportive of that. How do you navigate senior leaders that are blockers?
Well, okay, let's say in my experience, I don't think I've come across, let's say, this kind of people, but I would say that it would be important to find out from them what are they perceiving as risks, what are possible risks with whatever you want to push through, what are they afraid of, what are they reluctant about, and what is it that they need you to do to be able to get their support. So you approach from the risk point of view and try to have a conversation about those points. And when you do that, then you'll find, yeah, they will tell you, okay, maybe I just don't think this is a good idea because this idea is also going to affect another part of the business, or it's going to slow down things, or maybe we will not be able to launch quickly, or not be able to move fast enough, or we don't have the expertise, all that. So when you approach it from a risk perspective and you flag some of the risks yourself that you've probably identified, because when you have a good idea, you're also looking at what are the pros and what are the cons, and so those cons, you put the risks in that cons basket, and you go and have this discussion with them. It's just like when you're following up a deal with a client, you're trying to sell them something. What you're trying to do to get this client to decide quickly is to get them to tell you what is it that is stopping you from making a decision, or what can I do to help you make a decision quickly. And then you can be able to understand there's some things that may be out of your control, or maybe it's a timing issue, or all that. But when you do that, they see that you're trying to understand their side of the table where they're sitting from, and they may be more receptive to you.
Thank you so much for that insight. Instead of seeing them as the enemy of the state, try and understand their background and see how you can, you know, actually walk together in that journey and cultivate that trust.
Correct.
Now, what is the biggest misconception professionals have when it comes to managing those above them?
Well, I think there's aspects of okay, I don't know if it's the biggest because I don't have the statistics, but I think
Yeah.
people may think this is about manipulation, this is about, just making people feel good, those who are above you, and all that, so that they see that you're the good person, and, that kind of thing. I think what you're doing is that you are helping your leadership to succeed. And it's very important that when you are perceiving your leaders, when you're engaging with them, that you're telling them, you know what, I want you to look good. I want you to succeed. I mean, you're not telling them directly, but your attitude is, I'm here to make you to be successful. So you are not there to just sort of do everything they're telling you to do so that they feel nice. There could be some things that are not nice, and you need to be able actually to push back on that and say, Mr. So and so, Mrs. So and so, I don't think this is going to work because this is going to affect our results. It's not going to be good for us. So, but I think the biggest misconception is just about, that it's manipulative, or it's flattery, and that kind of thing. Otherwise, it's supposed actually to this partnership.
Fantastic. Now, if we advance over to managing down, leading teams and direct reports, something that a lot of people struggle with, including imposter syndrome. How can leaders maintain authority while still being approachable and collaborative? Because oftentimes you will get two divides, one that is overly friendly and it seems like the team is taking advantage, and the other one who is stone cold and very unapproachable vibes, and the mood and the feel within the team is very cold. So how can someone maintain the authority, but still retain, collaboration and approachability?
Yeah, so in this book, Patrick Lencioni says that great teams trust each other enough to engage in healthy conflict. Yeah, and
Okay.
you've asked that question. I think that's a very important question and a very good question. You have to be very clear on what is expected. You have to be clear on the standards that are expected. And also you have to be, let me say, generous with feedback. You give that feedback. And also you should also have very consistent follow through. Very important. And also to know that, being approachable, or let's say approachability, is not permissiveness. Yeah, it's basically to be accessible, but there's a level of accountability that comes with this. People say open door policy in some
Yeah.
cases, and it's just the physical door that's open, but the outside is completely closed. Now, that's
Yeah.
not what we're talking about. We are talking about somebody can come to you, they can speak with you, they can ask you questions, and you are able to sort of give them the feedback. But you've said, you know what, within this team, this is the standard that we're going to operate on, and we're not going to accept anything below this for reason A, B, and C. And being generous with feedback doesn't mean that you're scolding people, you're getting into arguments all the time and that kind of thing. No, no, no. You're giving proper feedback. That feedback may mean that somebody goes to redo the work they have done or make improvement, whatever it is, but you give it as it is, but it is aligned with the standard that you made clear right from the beginning when you started. And that's very important. And also you follow through to the end, because if you give feedback, you're very tough, you're giving feedback, and then you don't follow through, then somebody doesn't finish what they're supposed to do. Then they understand, aha, this gentleman, Mr. Lawrence, he just likes to say something for the sake of it, because he feels he's our manager or he's our leader, but he's not following through, and they know now that's not genuine, and that's not what people want. People want genuine feedback, that you're collaborative and also you're approachable.
So in that respect, I think we can summarize by saying, open communication, and it's not just one way, it is
Yes.
two-way. The consistency of, the actions that are being taken, and creating healthy boundaries where someone is clear about expectations, but at the same time, they know that if you go beyond this, then, you're just asking for trouble.
Yes, that's correct.
So in that respect, for let's say someone who is a new young manager, a young leader just starting out, what advice would you give them in terms of keeping the team motivated, keeping the team, cohesive and accountable? What are those tips you can give someone who's starting out in leadership, or even someone who is already a manager, but they are not too clear or they are struggling in their journey?
Well, first of all, now I'm happy that the word alignment is featuring, very important, and also the word motivation.
Yeah.
Now I see it's coming up. I think that's very important part. Now, if you are a leader of a team, you've just been appointed, or you have just joined an organization at a leadership level, or whichever the case. First of all, you just need to know that you are put in that position because there were some leadership aspects that were already seen in you, even before you got that role. And that's why you've been given the role. And every time when you go into a team, you always have to communicate the why. Why are we doing this? And that aligns with what I talked about in the beginning, why organizations exist. So people have to know why our team exists. What's really the role of our team? Once you communicate that, then everybody understands that this is why we're here. Now, after that, you can go to the what, and the what is uh, the things that you need to do, the numbers and all whatever KPIs that you're working on. Those are the what. Yeah, and actually, we do something else that we call the how. Which is a good value. So how are we relating with each other? How are we speaking with each other? How are we engaging with each other? And all that. And so within the how, it is very important to celebrate, I would say, small wins of achieving the why and how and the what. Yeah. And
Yeah.
celebrate small wins. And people like to be celebrated. If you cheer people, tell them, well done, I think this was a good achievement and all that, then that helps to actually sustain the morale. And then also, it's very important that the feedback loops are short. They shouldn't be long, long feedback loops. People get tired. So short
Yeah.
feedback loops. And John Maxwell says that people buy into the leader even before they buy into the vision. Yes, it's good to have a vision, but the kind of leader that you are is going to determine whether the people are going to walk through with you to achieve the vision that you have within the team or the organization.
Fantastic. Now we have reviewed managing up, managing down. Now let's look at the lateral influence, the managing across. Influencing peers can sometimes be harder than influencing superiors. What are some common challenges and how can they be navigated?
Well,
Consi-
yeah, sir, just go ahead.
no, I mean, considering sometimes peers see each other as competitors, so sometimes it's even harder to get buy-in from a peer than it is from your manager. So how do we navigate that?
Well, yeah, that's true. Sometimes peers also they may not be competitors, but they don't since they don't report to you, then the influence has to come from some other different direction. You know, and this influence is going to come from shared goals. It's going to come from authenticity, reciprocity. They see that they did something good, you do something good for them. There's that reciprocity, or you do something good for to someone else. you know and that's very, very important, that they see you as someone who's credible. You can offer help when you see that your peer is going through some struggle or some particular area. Be proactive actually in offering help. How can I come in and help you, even if it's not your job? You can throw in some ideas here and there, and when they see that, then they know that you actually have their interests at heart. Meaning that if you need something from them, then most likely they may come and help you. And if you're in the same team, then of course you have a common outcome, you have a common interest as a team, and it's good to make sure that if they are not seem to be common, then these are aligned. And I think very important to avoid these small wars that people are having within the organization. Just focus on the bigger picture. There's no need of proving who you are. You are who you are without proving to anyone. And so avoid tough wars. Just focus on the bigger picture, and talk about the shared goals. Be proactive in supporting the others, and they will also be, I think, they will reciprocate to support you.
What you've shared about has actually, it touches on a key aspect or a key element that each and every one of us must, develop and grow: emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, if you have good key emotional intelligence, you can actually navigate anything in life. So how can emotional intelligence play in sustaining cross-functional relationships? And this is not just limited to peer, but on a 360 perspective, the value of emotional intelligence. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, a very important attribute there, EQ as they call it. And
Yeah.
Daniel Goldman says that 90% of leadership effectiveness is rooted in EQ. Um, Emotional intelligence helps you to read your environment. It helps you to see if there are tensions and to be able to manage them. It also helps you to be able to communicate effectively, the different communication styles across the room or across different functions. And so it's very, very important, to be aware about EQ. And of course, if you are going to have collaboration or proper collaboration, then you need to get EQ or emotional intelligence to help you to navigate that space. I think it's just as simple as that. And if you go to different environments, if you go to a place where people are very happy, excited, and whatever, you know how you're going to communicate, how you're going to jump in. You're not going to bring sadness. When you go to a place where people are quiet and all that, you know how to navigate. So very, very important that you read the room, you analyze if there's any tension, you adapt the communication. You see a lot of people sort of sometimes you see people exchanging emails with each other and they don't achieve much because everybody says, but I sent you an email 2 weeks ago. No, but I had sent you 3 months ago, but I sent you this. And you can help these people, by telling them, look, if you send an email to someone and it's not responded, then there has to be something, it's taken long. Why don't you just go there and have a conversation with him, or just pick up the phone and call that person and find out what's going on? So very good to read what's happening, and especially if you're a leader and you see people are operating in this manner, then you notice already that there are some tensions, and if there are these tensions, then you take the appropriate measures by getting the people to be able to communicate with each other effectively. You don't just sit and watch, people exchanging emails, and nothing gets done.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And especially when you mentioned, I sent you an email, I've seen that happen. It's a battle of words, a battle of ego. And sometimes we, as you mentioned earlier, we lose our vision on the bigger picture, therefore creating tensions and, eroding the culture and the positive vibe that is needed in any workplace. So now let's talk about building relationship capital. How can professionals intentionally build relationship capital without feeling transactional or strategic in a negative way? I mean, considering sometimes people will go to an event, and in the event, you will network, you will get business cards. But sometimes people think just because you have a business card, that is your network. No, that's a contact. How can you, build that intentionally without having to seem like it's very transactional?
Yeah, actually, to avoid just being transactional, I go by what Stephen Covey says is it the five habits, whatever those his book. He
Yeah.
says that in one of the habits, I think number 5, he says, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." That's what he says.
Yes.
And so you are looking at what I get to understand what the other person needs. I get to understand what the person values or what they value, you know, and I get to know them, and then it becomes easy for me to present myself in a way that is going to help to build that relationship capital. So you let's say focus on value exchange, and we're talking of things like you're a consistent person, you're very reliable, you are genuinely curious when you're asking some questions, you're trying to find out information, because you want to add value to solve a problem, and you just want to be there to ensure that 1 year later, 6 months later, 1 month later, that when these people think about you, they think about you in a positive way, that you added value to them. Someone who follows through, people who forget things, and later on they don't even remember what the commitments they have made. Next time they show up, nobody takes them seriously, and follow through, I think, for me, is very, very important. You talked about exchanging cards. So you go to a function, and you've collected 20 business cards, and we know that's not networking. You just collected contacts,
Yeah.
which I think at some point you will need. And of course, effective networking is talking to one or two people, and those conversations build up, and there is something that can come out of it, either immediately or much later, but something builds up all the way to the end. Now that's networking. And so it's very important that when we go to engage with people or even within the organization, it's not just about give me this, I give you that. Have you done this? Yes, I've done. No, it's about offering value by you understanding what the other person really needs.
Now, over the years, all the years of experience that you've had, and through before you got into, MD position, you started somewhere. What formula did you use? What tactics did you use to, build those, strong relationships as you got that stakeholder management? What's your story when it comes to stakeholder management, and what can we pick? What can you ask us to pay attention to so that it makes our lives easier, not only from a professional perspective, but also when we are interacting with people out here?
Well, yes, I mean, when I was starting off work, just as a young engineer from the university, when I went to the workplace the very first day, to be honest, I had no clue what work was all about. In fact, I was
Yes.
wondering what am I going to do between 5 and 8, 8 and 5 p.m. Of course, I was assigned tasks. I was put through an induction program to understand how the organization worked. And then after that, of course, I was on my own, or rather, put as part of a team where now I'm expected to deliver. I was not thinking at that time about stakeholder management and all these fancy words that we're using. I was just thinking of going to work, doing my job, and getting my paycheck and going back home. But I also wanted to understand my work very well, what was expected of me. So it was very clear that I needed to do a good job and make sure that actually when I go back home, I have a good night's sleep because I've done a fantastic job. And that's what I did. I worked with different teams. And just made sure that I was let's say close to all the departments that I needed to work with, to the point where I could, let's say, go to another department and ask them to do me a favor, nothing illegal, but to
Yeah.
just some kind of priority, when they are doing tasks that would benefit me. So just give me some bit of priority, and so develop some kind of soft, soft sort of part of engagement with them that was beneficial to me and also beneficial to them. So even for them, when they needed something from my department, they would call me. Now, when I went to a meeting that was interdepartmental meeting, then I went having done my homework. For example, we have meetings where you have people from different departments, and then you discuss the receivables, the debtors, people who haven't paid, customers who haven't paid, and you need to give a feedback from a department. What is the status? And so every time I made sure that I was fully prepared when I went to these meetings, and so people see that you are adding value into the meeting, and people find you as a dependable person, and so people are able to sort of vote for you. So in my first company that I worked for, we had Employee of the Year awards. I worked there for 4 years and had 3 employee awards in those 4 years.
Wow.
These awards, yes, the management nominates, but also the rest of the company nominates, and then they agree. And I think that came mainly from the collaboration with the other people, by me doing my part and understanding what they needed from their side, and then supporting them as they supported me.
I mean, three Employee of the Year awards in 4 years. That is absolutely amazing. So, congratulations to you. I know it's
Thank you,
very
thank
many
you,
years later, but
thank you.
it actually speaks deeply to the beauty about being dependable, using collaboration as an asset, and it's two-way. So when someone knows that you actually follow through, they will not be hesitant to come through for you when that moment comes.
Exactly.
So when it comes to leadership wisdom and takeaways, if influence is the new currency of leadership, How can professionals start building theirs in their careers?
Okay, so basically, they should start, I would say, professionals should start building that as early as possible. That's number one. So don't wait or start from wherever you are. Let me say it's just like investments. You say
Yeah,
start now. Should have started yesterday, but yeah, start now.
yeah,
And you certainly have to deliver in a very reliable way. You have to communicate very well. And also, I think people normally want to see how you act under pressure. If you show in emotional maturity when there is pressure, then people actually find you more dependable. They can count on you and they feel safe around you. In that case, they're actually able to follow you. And we see this, job advertisements, HR professional putting this out to say that ability to work under
work under
pressure.
pressure.
Well, and normally say, yes, I can work under pressure, but when something happens, then you see, wow, they're not able to work under pressure. And here we're not talking about the pressure just comes from work because maybe you have more customers or you have more orders than you can deliver, and then you are rushing through to meet those kind of things. We're talking about pressure that comes from engaging with other people within the organization or with customers or other stakeholders. That kind of emotional maturity that you can show in such a situation will help you to sort of to grow that currency of influence. Let me say, people want to have a strong leader. They want to have a dependable leader. They want to have a leader who says, "Okay, let's go. This we think it is okay. Yes, we know there could be some headwinds, but let's just go. There could be some opposition, but let's just go." But they have seen you how you act under different situations. They have seen you deliver. They have seen you be very consistent. They have seen you communicating very well. They have seen you to be a reliable person and dependable. They will follow you, or rather, you'll be able to influence them.
Now, to add on to what you've just shared, if we were to look at personalities, so to speak, we
Yes.
have extroverts and introverts. And for extroverts, communicating with people, it's like second nature. How they do it, well, I mean, right or wrong is a topic for another day. But for them, expressing themselves comes easy. Introverts, on the other hand, they struggle. But at the same time, we also appreciate that introverts can give you the best quality of work because they're observant. They think things through. For an introvert that is joining us in this session, what are those tips you can share that can enable them to get out of their cocoon and enable them to use their strengths to create stronger relationships? You don't have to be known by everyone, but you can have key relationships within the institution that work to your advantage. What insights or what tips can you give an
Well,
introvert?
yeah. So as you're talking, I was smiling because actually I speak here as an introvert, which some people don't believe. Yeah, and in we had a guest speaker in one of the sessions in a book forum that's called the Men's Book Breakfast, that
Yeah,
brings people from different places to read together. And we
yeah,
were reading the book "What Brought You Here Won't Take You There" by Dr.
mm-hmm,
Marshall Goldsmith. And Dr.
yeah,
Marshall Goldsmith is someone who has, coached many people, very high level CEOs, the psychologist also. And he was asked about this question about introverts and extroverts, and the same question that you're asking me, but using different words. He was asking that question. And he said that should not be a problem. In a situation where you need to speak, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, then you will have to speak. And that stays aside. And I don't think that introverts have a problem speaking. Probably they may not want to be out there every time, but absolutely they have no problem speaking. If anything, they want, when they open up their mouth, then whatever they're saying is something that is adding value. So I don't see whether you're an introvert or extrovert being a problem. And of course, we have different personality traits and other ways of measuring, personality. But I think those are just the general ones that you say, that introvert and extrovert. And I think the main difference is that one is feels charged, they're okay to be alone, and the other one does not feel okay to be alone. They need to be with other people to get charged. But
Yeah.
in terms of what they can do, I think all of them can do, especially when it comes to leadership. I think all of them can be able to do this effectively if they understand the mission and they're able to push through. Of course, your personality will also maybe be favored towards particular kinds of jobs. It will be easier for you. I mean, if you like being out with people and talking to people and all that, so a job that involves that then will be naturally suited for you, and you'll be able to do that very well. But I should say that irrespective of whether you're an introvert or extrovert, I think you should be able to offer leadership effectively.
Fantastic. What have you learned about the balance between authenticity and diplomacy?
Okay, I would say that diplomacy earns access. When you have just using just general examples, when you have two parties that are not, seeing eye to eye, peace mediators, you
Yeah.
know, and they have diplomacy, and they're able to get access to each party. They can go to this side and they will be listened to, they will be welcomed, and they'll go to the other side and they'll be listened to, they'll be welcomed. You know, diplomacy earns you the access. Authenticity, on the other hand, earns you trust. The people, yeah, you're not only diplomatic having access, but you are someone who's trustworthy. And the best leaders use both, because if you, let's say, deliver truth or you deliver a particular message with these two, then you are able to sustain your influence. So I would say the difference: authenticity earns trust, diplomacy earns access.
Very succinctly put, and I don't think we actually take the moment to see how each nuance of diplomacy or authenticity has an impact with any interaction that we have. What is one practical starting point anyone can implement immediately to improve their stakeholder influence? Maybe we are struggling at the moment, or maybe we are in a situation where we have broken, we have really poor relationships with, doesn't matter up, down, or across. What is it that we can do to improve that? And if someone is starting out, what is it that we can start the journey?
Well, I would say just like any other, it's just like building a relationship. I think you have to be very deliberate or intentional about having moments to be able to engage with other people.
Yeah.
It could be a problem that needs to be solved, and you share solving problems together. You can find time to speak with people, like on one. Could be a coffee chat or whatever it is, but be very, very intentional about this, because we've talked about authenticity, we've talked about consistency, we've talked about values, we've talked about alignment, we've talked about all these things. But I would say there is a lot of influence that is built informally, in an informal setup, and those are moments that need to be grasped, be taken advantage of, and then that will help you to start to build, stakeholder sort of influence. Say, for example, is someone that every time they're in a meeting or they're in a different department, they're always just against what you are doing for whatever reason. If you have a coffee just in the office with this person, you have a conversation that is outside that meeting, and it's informal, you're just having a just general conversation, I think you're able to soften the person or soften each other up, and or rather warm up to each other. Then you are able to sort of push through some of these things. And you can even ask, but how come normally when I do this, I see you are reacting or you're not very supportive? But in a way, in an environment that is relaxed, then you are able, I think, to start to build that influence in that kind of setup. But you must be intentional, and I would say take first step. Don't wait for them. Don't say, no, let them move first before I move. No, you just move because it's in your own interest. Yeah.
I think I think what you just said at the tail end is very key. I think a lot of us, it's like we are seeking permission to act, yet we fail to understand that we can also have positive influence in a situation. When it comes to communication and trust, what are some early signs that trust with a stakeholder is eroding? I mean, how can we address the aspect of eroded trust? Because as you said, authenticity is, we can say authenticity equals trust, diplomacy equals access. So eroding trust, how can we navigate that?
Well, I think there are various ways that you can sort of, or various signs that you can see that trust is not there. For example, if you're not being assigned tasks to do, or people are not including you, you're feeling excluded. So it's a sign that you're not trustworthy. Or if you make a promise, it's taken lightly. People doubt what you say you're going to do. So people are very skeptical about your abilities, and mostly this is based on previous experience. It's not based on so somebody just doesn't wake up and decide, okay, now from today onwards I don't think I trust you. There's something that went wrong, and things that went wrong over time, and you let them down, or you let the organization down, and they feel that you're not dependable anymore, and you can see the signs. So if you see that you're being excluded now, or people are skeptical about what you're promising, then already those are signs that I think here there could be some. I'm not saying that that's a reason, that there could be some trust issues that need to be worked on very quickly.
So how can we now change that narrative? So in terms of, if you're not following through it, then you need to follow through. But
Yes.
let's say aspects such as tasks are not being assigned, or there's that feeling of exclusion within the team. What are those tips you can give someone to enable them have uncomfortable yet vital conversations of how can I come back to that circle of trust?
Yes, and if is a particular person, let's say a particular leader stakeholder, and I would say in this case maybe a stakeholder that is above you, you'd say, who seems not to trust you, it's good to find time to actually have a conversation with them. Set time, you call them for a meeting, find out whether you can, do you have 15 minutes, or like 15 minutes of your time is very, is it okay, which time is best, and have that conversation, and you air out your experience, and what you feel about the way things are going. They may tell you, most likely they may tell you what the reservations are, but probably they won't tell you. But at least they will see that you're now conscious, you're aware that there is something that is not okay, and you are taking proactive steps to try and remedy. And then when they see that, and then that is coupled with you executing your mandate, that you keep your word, you keep your promise. If you say, I'm going to finish this thing by this time, you finished it. If you're not going to finish by that time, you tell them, by the way, you know what, I don't think I can finish it, I'll finish it tomorrow. That kind of thing, that proactivity in terms of feedback, but you've already reached out to them proactively initially to say that, okay, you know what, I think there's an issue and I would like to correct this issue. Then you most likely will get some room to correct, but then now you need to correct your part. So it's not just to have a conversation, then you just go back to the normal ways. Because people talk in the organizations, people talk. Even when
Yeah.
people are doing performance reviews, and they are picking who's the best person in the organization, in the team. They'll say it's so and so. And who is the worst one? That one. It's this particular person. And you don't want to be on the side where you're the worst person. So you have to be always proactive when you think that there is something wrong. And then it's not always that, when you don't get assigned tasks, or when people don't include you, that is because of mistrust. It could be for other reasons. Maybe they don't need to include everybody, so there could actually be nothing wrong. So sometimes you could also be having thoughts that people are against me and all that, and yet that is just fear that you have in your mind. So it's always good to clarify this kind of thing and to be bold enough to just clarify, because you don't want to go to your workplace and you're worried the whole day or the whole month that people don't trust me. No, you don't want that. So take some proactive measures and reach out to those people that you think maybe don't trust you.
Brilliant. So, if I might compliment what you just said, would I be right in saying that when you're self aware and also having aspects of humility, they will enable you build really strong, strong relations within the organizations with various people. And with that, people will see that, you introspect, you acknowledge your shortfalls, and you're actually more than happy to build and correct the wrongs that you've done.
Absolutely, what you say is very right, and you also have to follow through with that. So don't just show remorse and all that, and you're not doing anything. You must follow through. Yeah.
In consideration that you've had a lot of cross-cultural, operations in various countries, and obviously cultural nuances come into place. In the world today, the world is a village. You could have your line manager sitting, we're currently in Kenya, your line manager could be sitting in Egypt or wherever it is in the world. And all these cultural nuances they will come into play. How can we respect, these cultural nuances, but also use them as a strength to enable strong stakeholder relationships? What do we need to put in mind?
Well, that's a good question, and especially now, yeah, it's really global. And I had a chance to work in Europe for a couple of years, and I worked in a team where out of we were 15 people in the team, and there were 11 nationalities in that team, and from all over the world. And even now, organizations are global, and you need to understand how let's say different cultures operate. I think there's a Dutch academician Geert Hofstede who talks about the cultural dimensions. When you talk about power distance, countries with high power distance, others with low power distance, and all those kind of considerations uh, when you are speaking with someone where there's a high power distance, then you need to know how to navigate that, because if they don't expect you at your level to be reaching out to them so directly, then you need to know that. You need to be aware and know how you're going to maneuver that. You don't just jump in. On the other side, there are places where everybody talks to everybody in whichever manner, whether this is the CEO or not, because they treat each other just as people being on the same level, it's just at your higher level of responsibility. Then also there you need to know how to navigate. So important to understand the cultural dimensions, like you said, and then navigate them accordingly. But then it doesn't mean that we have to stick to old ways. Sometimes it could be a relief for people from a different culture to have someone who comes and is very direct, and in some cases, then maybe you shouldn't be so direct, you need to be respectful and those kind of things. So there are those aspects that you need to consider, but I think if you read about the cultural dimensions and you're working in a global organization, then it's going to help you a lot.
That is very helpful, and in consideration that, especially post COVID, remote working, hybrid working, and the integration of technology in all our facets of life, it's important for us to review the various cultural nuances and how we can use that to our strength. As a final question, as leaders grow in their influence, how can they ensure they're empowering rather than creating dependency?
Well, a good leader, I would say, develops new leaders and develops many leaders. Someone who doesn't want to develop other leaders, and that's not a good leader, I would say, because it's someone who assumes that they are going to be there throughout. And we saw during COVID time, organizations. cutting down on headcount. We saw businesses shut down completely, and if people let you go, just know that the organization is going to continue. And so it's very important, if you consider yourself to be a leader, to start thinking already about your exit. What happens when I exit? Yeah, even if you are planning to work there for a long time, but think about your exit, because there could be some time you're still in the organization, but probably you're not able to work at that particular moment for whatever reason, or I'm out, I've been sent somewhere. Then what happens? Do you want your organization to stall or your department to stall? No. I think that's very old school kind of thinking, where a leader holds everything to themselves, all the knowledge, and you don't want people to be like you because you think you are the best. You have to build leaders as much as possible. And a good way to do this is to throw some challenges at them. It could be small projects and those kind of things to involve them, which sort of still expand their capacity within the roles they are in. And when you do succession planning, because very important to have succession planning for each and every role within the organization. So if I'm CEO, then if I'm not there, who else would replace me? You need to
Yeah.
have some names in mind, but you don't tell them. And each organization should have that, so that of course you have to manage expectations. And when you do proper succession planning, then the organization certainly is going to flourish. But don't assume that you will be there forever. So for that reason, then I don't want to train anyone. Then you're a bad leader. You should not be in that position in the first place.
I couldn't agree more. It's like whenever, whichever position you have, you should use that opportunity to groom others to be better than you or prepare them for the future that is coming up for them. I cannot thank you enough, Lawrence, for this discussion. It's been very insightful, and stakeholder management is one of those tricky things that people have to navigate within the office. It can be as clear as day, and at the same time it can be very ambiguous because it depends with who you're dealing with or what the intention is. I thank you very much, for taking the time to share your thoughts and insights. I thank the people that have, the patronage that we continue to have on via YouTube or LinkedIn. Thank you to those that have shared and sent in comments from YouTube. Asante sana. Any final thoughts? Any parting words for us?
Well, thank you once again for having me. I think it's really been nice, good conversations, managing up, down, and across 360 influence. And I think really, really nice questions that you've raised, and they prompt me to think a little bit more, which I think is nice. And just to encourage people that you have to manage across all directions as you move along. That is your pathway to success. That's what I can tell you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. Tonight's topic was managing up, down, and across 360 influence, the art of navigating stakeholder relationships. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I again thank you for accommodating the change from Tuesday to today. I thank you for your participation. Please do share with your colleagues, your friends, your family. Very insightful bits and bobs that have been shared. I think I need to listen to the recording again because there are a lot of authors and books that have been mentioned that I think I need to add into my reading list. So thank you so much for that, Lawrence. To everyone, I wish you all a lovely evening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Unplugged with Ross. Have a good night. Thank you and goodbye.